So yesterday we were dealing with the 10th verse, where the Lord says to the devotee that if he could not practice repeated spiritual penances, he can do everything thinking that it's God's action. All that he has got, his ability to work, his efficiency, whatever enables him to accomplish anything in this life is God's gift. Now this thought will naturally make him think of God whenever he does anything, and he can't keep quiet doing nothing. So every moment becomes an indirect meditation on God. Now in the 11th verse, the Lord gives another option. Now this is meant for the least competent of spiritual aspirants. Atha etadapi ashaktosi kartum madhyogamasidha. Now if you are unable to do even this, that is, even if you are incapable of doing everything as God's work, then at the time of doing work, you need not think that it is God's work. But after having accomplished something, mentally you surrender everything to God. Now this is possible for everyone. Mentally one can very easily surrender all his actions to God, because he is not sure that he will be able to remember God while doing work. In that case, after finishing the work, he can resign, surrender himself, that is the agent of action, and what he does, and also its result, to God. This is very simple, and this is free from any internal conflicts item. It was this which Sri Ramakrishna indirectly asked Girichandra Ghosh to do. When Sri Ramakrishna asked him to hand over to him the power of attorney, I have already explained this elaborately, so no need to repeat it. The very fact that Girichandra Ghosh could practice it shows that it is possible for any ordinary man. But one important point, and that is, he should be a man of strong integrity, and that was Girish's strength. Sri Ramakrishna understood that Girish was not a hypocrite. See, many people will meet holy men, and the holy man will give you an advice, well, you do this, all right, I shall do that. But they don't mean anything, in fact. They may not be sincere when they give a promise, well, I shall take the name of God twice a day or 3 times a day. No, they may not do that, but they will give a promise directly. But Girish was not that kind of a person. Sri Ramakrishna understood this man has got a strong sense of integrity and inner truthfulness. And he turned that into an instrument. Sri Ramakrishna made use of that great quality of Girichandra Ghosh. He understood, well, Girish says, well, I can't remember when I'm going to get up in the morning. And I don't know when I'm going to sleep, so I can't take the name of God in the morning or the evening or any time. So Sri Ramakrishna understood, he's sincere. Sri Ramakrishna didn't ask him not to drink, mind you. That is a very important thing. Girish would have immediately, well, I can't help drink. He was addicted to drinks, strong alcoholic drinks. Now, if a spiritual person, a teacher, tells a drunkard, well, don't drink from tomorrow onwards. If the drunkard is a sincere man, he would say, well, I can't stop drinking. If he is hypocrite, all right, tomorrow onwards I won't drink. But then he will continue. In both cases, it will not work. But in Girichandra Ghosh's case, the man was sincere in spite of all his other vices. He was a man of strong integrity. So, He said, I can't remember when I get up. So I can't give a promise that I will take the name of God in the morning or the evening. Alright, then you can give your power of attorney. Now it is possible only for a man who is very sincere, very honest, and a man of strong integrity. He may have all other vices, but he will be a man of strong integrity. Such people will make progress because the path is not blocked for them. The path leading to spiritual progress is not blocked. But if we have many layers in our mind, diplomatic skills, or well, somehow to get things done, cleverness, well, I shall do wonderful things. That means we have so many layers in our mind, and that won't work. That's why it is stated, at the time of death, our inner layers, multiple layers will not help us. Because when a man is physically and mentally suffering, when his mind is not in his control, it naturally projects its true character. In the Gospel, Sri Ramakrishna says, you may teach a parrot to take the name of God, or you may teach him songs. But when a cat comes, the parrot forgets everything, and then it starts crying, making sound. So when a crisis comes, and death is the most terrible crisis, for an intelligent man who has led an intelligent life, which is real preparation for facing death with intelligence, with a smile on the face, God's name at heart, if one can leave this body, that is the intelligent way of facing death. Now at that time, when the mind is completely weakened, then we cannot become diplomatic. Then our true nature comes out. That's why the Gita says, Yam yam vapi smaran bhavam tyajityante kaleberam tam tame vaiti kaunteya sada tad bhava bhavitaha. There is a famous sloga in the Gita. In the 8th chapter you find. See, it is said, it's a very famous verse, and in fact it solves some of the puzzles and riddles of human existence. Here Lord Krishna makes a statement. See, what you have in your mind at the time of death, at the time of breathing you the last, will decide your destiny, your after death existence, rebirth. It's a simple translation. Now, on the face of it, you may feel there's a contradiction. Well, a man who has led a very, very licentious, indisciplined life, he can cancel the effects of all his misdeeds just by taking the name of God. It's a very simple affair, a kind of confession. But that's not what Lord Krishna means here, because he understands one important point. You can see what the thought that comes to your mind at the time of facing death will be the totality of all the actions we have done in the past. Because whatever impressions and impulses and thought currents we have accumulated in the inner chamber of our mind will come to the surface by itself. We cannot block it. See, a diplomat may be very well trained. So, two diplomats, ambassadors of two nations which are about to start a war, you'll find Navy Chamberlain and Hitler shaking hands in the 1938 treaty, within a few months the war will start. Be wonderfully smiling. So, what is within can be concealed through diplomacy, but their mind is our control. We can manipulate our mental impulses, but when death comes, a sense of total helplessness that will be the strongest impulse in our mind, a sense of total helplessness. At that time, what we have accumulated in our mind comes to the surface. That's why you find in many traditions, when a man is dying, his relatives and friends and children will sit around him and chant devotional hymns and all that. This is a common practice. So the point is this: if a man is sincere, if there is only one layer in his mind, then he can straight away practice this. That is sarva karma phalatyaga, giving up the result. Because if a man sincerely surrenders his action and results to God, he cannot do anything evil. Girichandra Ghosh could not drink lead because he suddenly remembers, I have handed over my duty to the great spiritual person sitting in the temple. So he couldn't do anything evil. So because he's a man of sincerity. So now from 13th chapter onwards, altogether a new subject is introduced in the text. But before that, there is an intervening verse, that is the 12th one. The 12th sloka, if you read the meaning, you find there is a contradiction here. The 12th verse says, Sreyohi jnanam abhyasa jnana dhyanam visishyade dhyanar karma phalat tyaga shantiranantaram. See, the verse actually tells us that the best thing is sarva karma phalatyaga, giving up the result of all actions. That is the literal meaning of this verse. It is greater than knowledge, jnanam, it is greater than repetition, and it is also greater than meditation, it is greater than abhyasa, everything. That is what is given here. But in the 4 verses, that is 8th, 9th, 10th and 11th verses, if you read this verse, you understand, giving up the result of actions is given to the least competent spiritual aspirant. In fact, that's the last choice, meant for those who are the least competent of spiritual aspirants. But the 12th verse says this is the highest. You know the reason? Because this is the entrance, is the entry to the royal highway or spiritual journey, which takes you to the highest wisdom. So, in a secondary sense, Lord Krishna praises karma phalatyaga. That means giving up the results of action. For many reasons. One, it is very easy, very straightforward, very simple. And remember, you need not necessarily be a believer in God. You need not necessarily be a conventional church goer or a temple goer of anything of the kind. You need not formally follow any mechanical rituals. Nothing of the kind. This is possible. So there is something unique about this last option. So it is praised by Sri Krishna, by the Lord, in a more or less in a secondary sense, to encourage Arjuna, because Arjuna can straight away do that. That is precisely what Arjuna actually did. At the end of the Gita, you know, I shall give this background should be kept in mind. At the end of the text, Arjuna makes a statement. Nashto moha smidil labdha tut prasada maya achyuda sthitosmi gata sandeha karishe vajanantava. This is Arjuna's statement. Literal meaning is, now I am free from doubts, now I am free from conflicts, confusions. I shall act according to your instruction. That is the last. Karishe Vachanantava means I shall act according to your instruction. In fact, this is the last sentence which Arjuna speaks in the Gita. And you know how Arjuna begins his dialogue. In the first chapter, Arjuna says, see, in front of me, I am witnessing so many people ready to fight with me. my teachers, my ancestors. Bhishma was ancestor, Drona was the teacher, and other Kauravas were cousins, brothers, and close relations. So Dishtvamam Sujanam Krishna Yutsum Abhamustidam Sidandim Abhagatrani Mukham Chavarisushi. This how it means. You find the 28th verse of the first chapter, you can find. When I look around, I am seeing in front of me, all around me, huge army. And who are the leaders of the army? The generals and captains, my own relations, my own teachers, my own ancestors, and my own cousin brothers. How can I fight and kill them? So this is Arjuna's problem. It is portrayed in a very symbolic way. And then Arjuna, at the end of the second verse, at the end of the Arjuna, at the end of the first chapter, he says, Itimam apradigaram ashastram shastrapaneha dhattarashtarane hanyus tanme kshemadaram bhavet. Well, I won't fight, won't do anything. Let them kill me. I shall sit here. I won't do anything. Eva muktva rishikesham gudakesha parandava nayotse iti govindam uktva tushnim babhuva. This is the 9th verse of the second chapter. I am giving a small background to understand the true dynamics of Arjuna's dilemma, problems. Now he says, well, having said all this to Krishna, Arjuna said, I won't do anything, I shall keep quiet. Because it was not that Arjuna was a practitioner of non-violence. In the Mahabharata, you find many great men. They were established in non-violence. Maitreya, Vidura, Krupa, and so many. All great saints and sages. They didn't bother about any kingly comforts or anything. They were just sitting in their caves doing meditation. Or they were trying to instruct their disciples. But Arjuna's case was, Arjuna was supposed to do a sacred duty to protect the women folk, the poor people, the innocent people who were terrorized and who were be massacred by the evil men Kauravas. That was Arjuna's problem. So Arjuna had to do this duty. But Arjuna says, well, I won't do anything. And that Arjuna, at the end of the 18th chapter, at the end of the Gita says, Karishe Vachanandava, means, now I am free from my doubts, my confusions. I shall do as you instruct me. This is Arjuna's promise, and he does it. That's what about it. Now, and what was Arjuna's attitude at that time? Arjuna understood the importance of action without desire for results. Arjuna understood the importance of the spiritual practice of giving up, surrendering the results of actions. That was actually the royal path which Arjuna took, and Krishna knew that that was exactly what Arjuna was going to follow. That is why here in the 12th verse Krishna says, greater and better is knowledge, that is jnanam, than repetition abhyasa. And meditation with knowledge is better than just knowledge. And better than meditation is renunciation of the results of actions. That is the 12th, that is the meaning of 12th statement. The reason is karma phalatyagam, giving up the result of actions is possible. Technically speaking, if you go an inch further, you find the 4th option which Krishna gives, the 11th verse, means this. You need not worry about what is going to happen. Just do your duty. And then mentally you give up the results of action to God. Mentally surrendering. Now if one goes on practicing this slowly, he will start remembering that, well, I am going to give up the result of my actions after this. So, result of action is not throwing to the gutter, surrendering as a flower to God. That is very important. So, there will be no indifference or complacency or inefficiency in action. See, when you offer a flower, when you prepare something that you that you want to offer to somebody whom you respect and honor, you will naturally be careful about what you are going to select to offer. So you want you be careful. It should be a beautiful flower with fragrance. Then only you will offer it to a great honorable person whom you sincerely respect. So giving up the result of action or surrendering, resigning the result of action means mentally offering the result of your actions to God. So there is absolutely no scope for lethargy, laziness, inefficiency, and complacency. On the other hand, in another verse which I quoted some days back during the question and answer session, Sri Krishna says, if we can combine the utmost efficiency, dynamism, zeal, and effective work, and detachment, that is the essence of Karma Yoga. And this resignation or surrendering of results of action is the means for practicing this high ideal of Karma Yoga. I quoted some days back, see, Saktaha karmani avidvamso yatha kurvanti bharata kuryan vidwan tatha asaktaha chikishuhu lokasangraham. So, the meaning is this. On the one hand, we have a person who is full of desire, ambition, sense of purpose, efficiency, and workaholism, and depression, anxiety, neurosis, all other problems that come in their trade. Taking pills, medicines for stress, tension, and all that. But he's very effective, very efficient, and he makes a lot of money, he makes a lot of profit. On the other hand, there is another person. He is as efficient, as enthusiastic, and as dynamic as the other man, the one whom I mentioned. But there is one difference. He is detached, because he surrenders, mentally he resigns the results of his actions to God. So it is a very intelligent, wise way of doing this. We can do the work, we can avoid the problems of work. From a subjective point of view, remember, a man who is working hard, he may, because his body is made of 5 elements, so he is subject to the laws of 5 elements. He may fall sick and all that. But falling sickness is not a problem for them. Whether it is a problem for them or not is the question. See, somebody very often, in fact, one of our very great monks, world-renowned monk, he came to the ashrama where I was. That Swamiji gave initiation, and there was a young man, and Swamiji, he was 93 years old, perhaps 91 or 93 years old, and he had to undergo some medical care. If Swamiji is so perfect, why does he fall sick? Even when Swami Vivekananda fell sick, some devotees, well, if Swami is falling sick, then what kind of spirituality it is? Swamiji fell sick, but he didn't feel it. Sri Ramakrishna fell sick, but Sri Ramakrishna was never sick for himself. So, from a subjective point of view, these great spiritual personalities, they are not affected by whatever happens to their body. Because body is made of 5 elements. Body can never become eternal. Sri Krishna also was. He also died. Jesus also died. Buddha died. All these spiritual personalities, some of them fell sick and they died. The difference is they fell sick, but they did not feel themselves to be sick. They may have fallen sick, but they didn't feel that they were sick. From a subjective point of view, this sickness never affects them. As I said the other day, a famous actor may play the role of a beggar and get an Oscar award, and he may look much more miserable on the stage or maybe the screen than professional beggars, because he has to earn an award. So naturally he has to be more beggarly than professional beggars. But then only he will get an award. But then after the makeup is removed, he goes to 6-star hotel, 5-star hotel stay. And in fact, in Vedantic text, this is given, this point is explained in a very half humorous way. How a spiritual person may appear to be sick or suffering from some physical difficulties from the standpoint of an outsider, but they themselves don't feel sick. In Vedantic, they say Rajnyaha Veena Vadanadivat. This is a technical word. The meaning is this: a king plays on his violin. This part. Now, when a king plays his violin, you may be living in his palace, and he may be not a professional musician, but once a while he may play on his instrument. But he won't be bothered. But suppose the same king invites a professional musician from a distance and asks him to play in the open court, this professional musician has to be very careful. If ancient times, when kings were tyrants and cruel, if the musician doesn't put up his best show, he may even kill him. He may ask him to be. These things happened in ancient times, medieval times, or even early days. So, when a professional musician is invited, he has to be very careful. He will have a lot of tension, anxiety, whether his performance is up to the expectation of the king or not. But when the king himself plays, he is not affected. Now, a spiritual personality, a spiritually enlightened person, when he falls sick, it is like the king playing on his violin. He is not affected, he is unconcerned. For those who are not spiritually enlightened, it is a source of worries and problems. This is the idea behind. So that point is stressed here. That means karma phalatyagam, because it is simple, it is easy, and if a man sincerely takes to this path, he is sure to reach his goal. Now we'll come to 13th verse. From 13th verse, Lord Krishna is giving a long list of the characteristics of great spiritual persons. An ideal devotee. Now, if you read these characteristics, what are the external and internal characteristics of an ideal man of God, an ideal devotee? These characteristics are outlined here. You find in the second chapter, from 54th verse, where the teacher gives an outline of the characteristics and attributes of a man of steady wisdom. There also you find the same characteristics. So in the second chapter, Arjuna asks a question to Krishna. You just now described how a great man, how a great spiritual aspirant reaches the highest level of spiritual enlightenment. Sthita prajna, he attains steady wisdom, a wisdom which never wavers. Now tell me, what are the external characteristics of this man of steady wisdom? How do we identify a great spiritual personality? What are the external attributes that we may find in a great spiritual person? Sthita prajnasya ka bhasha samadhistasya keshava siddhi kim prabhasheda kim asida vrajeda kim. The question is, what language he speaks? How does he speak? How does he interact with the people? How does he move about? What is his attitude towards other people? How does he look upon life or world as a whole? What are those attributes? In response to this request, Krishna gives a long list of the characteristics of a man of steady wisdom, a spiritually evolved, enlightened person. Now, here also you can find a similar list. So, Adveshta Sarvabhutanam Maitra Karuna Evacha Nirmamo Nirahankaraka Samadukha Sukha Kshami. He is Adveshta. Adveshta means anyone who is free from hatred or aversion towards anyone, anybody else. He doesn't hate anyone. Sarvabhutanam Adveshta. Or we can say Sarvabhutanam Maitra. Both are correct. He never hates anyone. And Sarvabhutanam Maitra. He is friendly and compassionate. Karuna means he is compassionate. So he is friendly and is compassionate to us all, and also he doesn't hate anyone. A real devotee understands that entire creation consists of the children of God, whom he loves and whom he worships, and whom he wants to reach. So how can you help? How can you hate his other children? That's important thing. If God is the father of the entire creation, then how can he divide humanity into one group of people whom he will punish and another group of people whom he will not punish, whom he will reward? How can there be division or conflicts or inequality among his creation if God is the father of all? Now a devotee looks upon God as a supreme person who is a creator, sustainer, and who is compassionate towards all his children. So his attitude of friendliness and non-hatred, compassion, is natural. So he becomes a friend of all, and he becomes compassionate towards all, and he doesn't hate anybody. He doesn't even hate any creature, not only human beings. He is free from hatred towards the whole creation. And again, he has no feelings, nirmama, mean he has no, well, I'm this person, these things are mine. And he's free from egotism, and he is even-minded in pain and pleasure. Now remember, here Sri Krishna is giving the characteristic of a man who has reached the highest level of spiritual evolution. So this is natural to him. Now the question may arise, because in many devotional textbooks you find instruction. You should be careful about the word, about deed, about the movement, about your conversation. So you find holy company. You find this satsanga, holy company. Holy company is trusted by Sri Ramakrishna. Sri Ramakrishna himself says that we should be careful about certain people whose association may take away our faith in God, may create confusion in our mind. So we have to be careful, and we have to associate as far as possible only with people who are devoted and whose association will reinforce our faith in God. So we have to be very careful. Sri Ramakrishna gives such instruction in the gospel. You find in all devotional literature you find this. How do you reconcile this? The point is these characteristics, that is, looking upon entire creation as one, friendliness towards all, even-mindedness towards all. This is given here as a natural characteristic of the highest devotee. But those who have not reached that highest level of spiritual evolution, those who have not reached their goal, and those who are still seekers, who are making efforts to reach the highest spiritual evolution, they should be very careful in their movements, in their words, and their interactions. Sri Ramakrishna says, a plant, if you plant a seed, you have to put a fence around it. Otherwise, goats or cows, they will come and eat away from it. They will not grow. But if it becomes a mighty tree, then there is no need of fence. You can even tie an elephant to it. So, those who have not reached the highest level of spiritual evolution, they have to be very careful. So often you find spiritual aspirants, if you associate with people who tell you, well, there is no God, all these things are absolute rubbish. No. You may, in the beginning, may think, well, it's all, in fact, this man may create problem for me. He will take away my faith, so I should be very careful. But at the second stage, you will start thinking, there is something in what he says. After all, is there any God? Am I making a fool of myself? Trying to practice spirituality and devotion. Perhaps he's right. And after some long association with him, your faith also starts shaking. And that creates confusion and problems in mind. And spiritually one gets lost. It's a real problem. That's why in the famous classic Bhagavad Purana, it's a famous book, it describes devotees of three types, three different types. The highest devotee is one who is described here. He looks upon entire creation as non-different from God and as non-distinct from himself. For him, these characteristics are natural. But those who have, in fact, it is given here, Sarva Bhudeshu Yapashyet Bhagavad Bhavamatmanaha Bhudani Bhagavadi Atmani Esha Bhagavadottamaha. This is the verse that's translated in English. The one who sees the entire creation, the whole humanity in God, and the one who sees the presence of God in entire creation, is a devotee of the highest type. The one who sees God's presence in everyone, and the one who sees everyone in God. But this is the characteristic, this is the natural characteristic of a devotee of the highest type. That is outlined here in this 13th verse. And then in that text, there is an interesting description of a devotee who has not reached this stage. Right now, he has disciplined his life. He has started listening to good ideas, and he has started thinking positive thoughts. He has stopped some of his vices, like say Girish Chandra Ghosh in the process of transformation. There are many such great men who later become great. Now, such people, they are sincerely following the path of devotion, but they have not reached the highest goal. Say, plant which has grown about, say, 4 feet, sprouts, it's already grown to 4 feet or 3 feet. So you have to put a fence around that plant. Otherwise, goats and all cattle all will come and eat away, and there will be no plant left. Now, in this Bhagavad Purana says that this is one of the most classic instructions meant for a spiritual aspirant. So, before quoting that verse, I should explain. We should not put ourselves in the position of the highest devotee just after reading these verses. Because mind has got a tendency, well, if God is everything, then what is wrong? I can if I can move with, I can associate with all people, no problem. And not only that, psychologically we are not often willing to admit that we have not reached the highest goal. We always want to pamper ourselves and delude ourselves into thinking that we are fit for the highest path. Means nothing less than highest. We don't want anything less than highest and the best. So often we think what is prescribed for the highest devotee, or what are the characteristics of the highest devotee, I must have them. And then we try to practice and fall into a ditch. And then we think these are absolutely nonsense. So this often happens. So to safeguard you against this possible risk, Sri Krishna tells in the second verse of the Bhagavad text, Ishvare tadadhineshu baliseshu dishutsucha prema maitri kripa upeksha yakarodi samadhyamaha. Means, first, the earlier verse which I quoted, the Lord gave the picture of an Uttama Bhakta, means highest devotee. A devotee who has reached the highest level of perfection. And remember, the highest level of perfection in devotion is not different from the highest realization of Advaita or non-dualism. There is no difference. But those who have not reached that stage, Krishna says, you should have devotion to God. And you should be friendly with those people who are devoted to God, who are leading good life, and who will only give you good thoughts. If you associate with them, their thoughts and their words will encourage you in your path of spiritual life. They will not make you a skeptic. They will not create confusion and doubts in your mind. Rather, if you have any problem, they will say, this is natural. I am also a devotee like you, trying to practice spirituality. I am also facing the same problem. So that's why you find in Swamiji's Bhakti Yoga lecture, in Sri Ramakrishna's Gospel, and also in the two books, Chandilya Bhakti Sutras and Narada Bhakti Sutras, you find one point mentioned again and again, that devotees or spiritual aspirants should always associate with fellow spiritual aspirants and fellow devotees. That's the best way to reinforce our spiritual life. So here Lord Krishna says, you should have devotion to God. That Ishvare Prema means the highest devotion. Tad adhineshu maitri. Adhineshu means towards devotees of God, towards fellow pilgrims in spiritual journey, we should be friendly. A sense of camaraderie. And then what about those who are ignorant of the basic principles of spiritual life? We should be compassionate, and we must try to discuss these spiritual ideas with them. Those who are ignorant, at the same time those who are humble enough to feel the need for spiritual ideas. With such people, we can discuss compassion, kripa. But what about the fourth category? If you associate with them, you are gone. Because there are some very strong-willed personalities. In fact, they are men of iron will. And you are a spiritual pilgrim, a spiritual aspirant. And they are highly skeptical. They criticize everything in this world. And they disbelieve in everything. And they don't believe in any morality or ethics or anything. So how should we interact with those people? So Sri Krishna says, keep a long distance. In fact, Swamiji in Bhakti Yoga lectures and in Jnana Yoga lectures, another context, uses this word indifference, indifference, indifference. You may have, some of you may remember. There is one sentence, indifference, indifference, indifference. Now, if you think, well, here Adveshta Sarva Bhudanam Maitra Karuna Evacha, Gita says that we should be friendly with all because the whole humanity is God's creation. So, these people who will confuse your mind, they are also God's creation. Let us be friendly with them. Well, if you have reached the highest level of spiritual evolution, if you have become an ideal devotee, like Buddha or Christ or Shankara or Sri Ramakrishna, Vivekananda, anybody, you can try to convert them. But otherwise, if you are only a spiritual seeker who has not reached the highest goal, and if you try to be friendly with them and if you try to convert them, they will convert you. That's what often happens. Because slowly our mind begins to waver. So at the beginning, perhaps we may mentally dismiss as irrelevant their negative ideas. And then slowly we start thinking, but there should be some truth in what he says. May not be completely. And slowly, ultimately, you come to the conclusion, he is right and you are wrong. So very often, unless you have become a Buddha, don't try to convert an Angulimala. Angulimala will take away your life. Angulimala was a demon. He was a robber, and he had a wonderful hobby. He used to cut off the fingers of poor pilgrims and used to make garlands, and he used to decorate his body with those garlands. And used to rob them, kill them, and take away their fingers. So when Buddha was passing through that road, many people warned him. It's a terrible fellow, he's living there, he will kill you. But Buddha was Buddha. So he didn't bother. And Buddha started walking. And Angulimala saw him. And he found this man is not afraid of me. Such a arrogant person. And Angulimala tried to chase him, but he could not catch up with Buddha, though Buddha was walking very slowly. And then Buddha turned round, and when Angulimala looked at him, he tried to take out his chopper, as his usual business of cutting the fingers of innocent people. But he could not do that. Somehow he could not do any violence to this man, Buddha. And he was converted. He became a great Buddhist monk. Like that you find great men in the world. Sri Ramakrishna converted Girish Chandra Ghosh, but don't try to convert Girish Chandra Ghosh at random. Very risky. Rather, you will become Girish Chandra Ghosh. This is a great danger. So that's why, when Lord Krishna describes the characteristics of a spiritual seeker, who is a sincere seeker, who has already set on his spiritual journey, but not reached the goal, who should be careful, like a plant which needs fencing around at a time when it is growing. So he says, you should have devotion to God, you should be friendly with God's devotees, and you should be compassionate towards those who are humble but ignorant of God's glories, and should try to discuss with them. But with those who will take away your faith, who will confuse your mind, keep a long distance. That's why Swamiji, along with this, he uses the word indifference, indifference, indifference. 3 words. 3 times he repeats. And then in another context, Swamiji says, what is true religion? Then he defines anything which gives you feeling, anything which is positive, that is true. Anything which is negative, that is false. So religion ought to be always positive, can never be negative. It should help you from where you stand and give you a lifting hand and raise you a little higher. It should not pull you further down. Anything which is negative is unspiritual, and anything which is positive is spiritual. In one of his classic definitions, he says. So this is the 13th verse. Now we are coming to the 14th one. Santushtaka satadam yogi yatatma dridhanishchaya Mayi arpida manubuddhi yoman bhakta samepriya. So that devotee is dear to me. He is my dear devotee. He is my ideal devotee. That is how it ends. Who is my ideal devotee? In the 13th verse, there is a long description. Also in the 14th verse, Santushtaka. Santushtaka means always having a sense of joy. It is not joy really, it is contentment. The word santosha means inner contentment, and the santushta means somebody who has got inner contentment. Now it is not satisfaction. It is not the feeling, well, I have got something which gives me joy. It is not. Santosha actually means the feeling that you get when you accomplish something. The feeling that there is nothing more to be accomplished. There is nothing higher to be sought after, to work for. I have already got what I am seeking, and there is nothing beyond this which I must seek. If anything gives you that feeling, it is giving you santosha or inner contentment. And this is one of the greatest characteristics of an ideal devotee. Not only an ideal devotee, a karma yogi, a man of wisdom, and all that. Santosha. He will not. Now remember, santosha is not merriment. Santosha is, what is called, this inner contentment is in a way an attitude towards our life and also towards the whole world. More than that, it is a philosophy of life, contentment. It is not a joy that we get something. In fact, that joy is called sukha in Sanskrit. And that joy is always associated with its opposite. Dukkha means grief. If when a hungry man gets food, he gets joy. But before he got that joy, he had grief, and after some time again he will have grief. Again he will become hungry. So this sukha or joy is always associated with grief. It's called dukkha. There are pairs, in fact. You cannot have a single coin with only one side. A coin should always have two sides. So there can be no joy without a corresponding grief. So the characteristic of a devotee is that he will have this inner contentment. In Sanskrit, it is called santosha. In Gita, in another context, you find sukham atyantikam yedvat buddhigrahim atindriyam. The meaning is this: that great joy which goes beyond joy and sorrow. That great happiness which goes beyond both happiness and also unhappiness. That is atyantikam. That is transcendental joy. That is what is meant by contentment. Now, an ideal devotee and also an ideal follower of the path of karma yoga, or an ideal aspirant who follows the path of wisdom, any genuine spiritual aspirant will have this sense of contentment. A contented man may also need many things just for living in this world. But he will not feel miserable if he doesn't get it, because he has got this contentment. So contentment is not the fleeting experience that we get when we get something, when we acquire something. It is a whole attitude, an entire philosophy or outlook of life. And that is the first characteristic of An ideal devotee. That is Satatam Santushta means he is always ever content. And again, yogi means a spiritual aspirant who naturally is uh, is immersed, or he is capable of being immersed in meditation. Who is an expert in meditation, who can meditate on the transcendental. Yatatma. Yatatma is a man, is somebody who has full control over himself, self-controlled. So these are the natural characteristics of the highest devotee, and these are the characteristics which a spiritual seeker who has not become a highest devotee should try to acquire. That is how the interpreters explain this. These characteristics are natural characteristics, natural inseparable attributes of a devotee of the highest type. And these are the characteristics which a beginner or an aspirant who has not reached his goal should slowly try to acquire and develop and reinforce. That's right. So again, Dhranischaya, and this is also a strong determination. No one can be spiritual without an iron will. And this is often stressed. You can find in the Puranic literature there are many stories which underline this point. Means a strong determination. Without that, nobody can be a devotee. A devotee should be strong-willed. One classic story is there, and that story is meant to underline this point. How and why a devotee who has set upon his journey in spiritual life should have a strong sense of determination. I should refer to a well-known Purana, Bhagavad Purana. I should tell the story. So for those who are interested in going deeper, you can find 4th Skandha in 5 chapters, from 8 to 12 chapters. You can find the story of a small boy, a prince. Now, his father had married twice, and the father was favoring the younger princess and her child. And this boy is the hero of the story we are going to narrate. His name is Dhruva. If you want to read it, you find the Sister Nivedita's famous book, Margaret Noble, Swamiji's disciple. She has written a very well-known book, one of the most wonderfully well-written books that anyone could read. The Cradle Tales of Hinduism. There she has given an outline of the story of this little boy, Dhruva, a 5-year-old boy. Now his father was not well disposed towards him and did not give him equal place in the family circles. I won't go into those details. So one day he left his home with the permission blessing of his mother. Mother was also entreated by her husband. So both were helpless. So this boy left his home, and his purpose was, well, my father did not treat me well, so I must get the blessings of God. He will give me protection. That was a strong determination. He will change my father's mind, attitude towards me. So as he was walking through the forest, he was seen by a great sage. The name of the sage is Narada. Narada is a well-known saint, a sage who appears in many of the mythological works of Hindu spiritual tradition. He had accepted it as his mission to help spiritual aspirants and devotees wherever he finds them. And he was also traveling through the same forest, and he found a small boy, 5-year-old boy, walking with a grim expression on his face. Then Narada, there is an exclamation in the story. Aho Teja Kshatriyanam. Narada exclaims. This is very important to quote. Then only you understand the real message of the story. Narada mentally exclaims, what? Because he was a great sage, man of wisdom. So he knew, without being told by Dhruva, he knew the whole background, the divine power here. So, what a strong determination this small prince has got. And Narada approached him. And Narada wanted to help this boy, to give him some instruction on how to do spiritual practice. He wanted to help him. But before that, he wanted to test the boy. So Narada asked him, as if he did not know anything. Narada asked him, what's the matter with you? Why are you walking here alone in this thick forest? There are wild animals. They will kill you. They will eat you. Then, actually Narada knew, because he was a man of supreme wisdom. So, but he wanted to test the boy. And Dhruva narrated his unfortunate domestic situation, family background. It happens in many families. And then Narada tried, well, you are talking about this. It is natural. It is found in all families. It is natural occurrence. You go to any family, you find this sort of conflicts. If you go back home now, your father will be very happy. He'll be, in fact, he's worried that you have left the palace and is actually trying to get you back. He has sent messengers in search of you. So better go back. You're only 5-year-old boy. This is the right time for you to play and all that. But Dhruva said, the little boy said, no. I have set my mind on a purpose. Before attaining that goal, I won't turn back. And when Narada found that a little boy was so strongly intent on doing penance and having a vision of Vishnu in God, then Narada instructed him, taught him some devotional hymns, some mantras, some spiritual words, mantras, and this you chant with great concentration. Go to that place, bank of a river, Kalindi river, and there you stay. Every day you take bath in utter loneliness. You always meditate on God and pray to Him. Your wish your wish will be fulfilled. God will fulfill your wish. And Dhruva went and he did penance for 6 months, and in 6 months he had a vision of God Himself. Now this is the story. The story may look a bit too far-fetched or mythological, but this story is often narrated by many great Vedantic thinkers to reinforce the idea that without a strong will, without an iron will, a strong determination, no one can progress in spiritual life. This is the story behind the story, the essence of the story. Now I will continue this discussion tomorrow. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. If you have got any doubt, discussion, we will have discussion now.
Last night we talked about how for people like Swamiji, they could feel that everything had been everything. If we as devotees do our very best consciously throughout our day and surrender, is that also a promise to us?
Yes, in fact, Swamiji was referring to some outstanding spiritual personalities who are born with a special mission to accomplish. For other spiritual aspirants, if Swamiji repeats this, and Sri Ramakrishna makes this point in Gospel, if we walk half the way, before we reach the half the way point, God will come nearer to you. Because if we make sincere effort, you will find things start happening. It happens. And that's why, as I said, we may have some obstacles. We may have to face some obstacles. But spiritual practice will reduce the intensity of those obstacles, those obstructions. Obstacles will be there. Obstacles are meant to reinforce and to strengthen our mind to accomplish our goal. But if we make sincere efforts, obstacles will either vanish or their intensity will be reduced. This is a natural experience for all sincere seekers.
Could you talk a little bit about the layers of the mind that you're talking
Oh,
about?
yes. Yes. See, in a way, that's what the Bible says. You should be like a child to enter the kingdom of heaven. That idea defines something. It's found in all religions. Not childishness, but childlikeness. Childlikeness. That inner purity of mind. So very often we develop many layers in our mind, multiple personality layers. We have got some idea in mind. That's what we actually believe in, and then we strongly project something else outward. So we want to be seen to be something other than what we actually are. So this is naturally two layers are formed. This sometimes creates problems in spiritual life. But this sometimes, this may be interpreted as a necessary tool for living this modern world of different types of varieties of experiences. But still, as a spiritual aspirant, as we go deeper, we find the more intensely we pray, the more intensely we practice spiritual disciplines, the layers are reduced and we are able to think as we do and do as we think and speak as we think. All these are possible. Say, this is what really happens.
Does it help us to become more, when you say speak as you think, and your thinking also will raise, because you're not just giving an opinion about stuff all the time.
Yes, yes.
So the mind itself has to be rid of a lot of the excess
Yes.
stuff you care about.
Yeah, right.
So being free to say what you think is always very important, very nice. So
As we pray with more and more intensity, we feel this. It's a matter of inner experience. See, there is always a great dichotomy, a conflict between the outer world and what we actually want to do. This is always a problem. And in normal life, you can't just tell everyone what you really think about them. If you go to my, it's not possible. But that is possible, Even Vedanta also say, Bhava Dvedam Sada Kudyar Kriya Dvedam Na Karhichit. The meaning is this: keep Advaita strongly in your mental horizon, but don't always try to put it into action. As just now we discussed, we see on the one hand you can see the apparent contradiction, which is not really no contradiction. See, on the one hand, Advesha Sarvabhudanam Maitra Karuna Evaja. The Lord says you should be even-minded towards all, you should be a friend of all, you should look upon the entire creation, the entire humanity as one spirit, one spiritual entity as your spiritual family. True, in that case, can be easily associated with all sorts of people in the same way. That's why in the interpretation I made this point clear. At the practical level, before we reach the highest goal, we have to use a proper, the only word I can use discrimination, but that word has got certain other connotation in America because of historical associations. I cannot use the word. What I mean is properly discernment. Well, there are certain things which alone I should do. There are certain things which I should not do. And there are certain type of people with whom only I should have close association. You should be friendly with all. But at the same time, before you reach the goal, as I said, the plant needs a fence around it. Otherwise, God will come and eat it. It will die. So, a spiritual seeker, especially one who has just started a spiritual journey, will need a proper discerning faculty to discern what is the right and what is wrong. Otherwise, our spiritual life will be distracted. As I said, unless you become a Buddha, don't try to convert Angulimala. Don't go near him. Dangerous. So this you find in all you can find in the lives of all great spiritual personalities. And along with spiritual progress, this power of discernment also comes automatically. Spiritual evolution is not a highly compartmentalized process. Along with spiritual progress, a proper discerning faculty inherently develops in man. And we do that, not just because we read it in books or we are instructed by somebody. It becomes a natural faculty of any spiritual seeker. You feel that there are certain people, in the present, we somehow feel a bit, you feel devotees. Among devotees, you find. That's why Sri Ramakrishna in the Gospel says the devotees of God belong to one group. Not that we are greater because we are devotees of God, others are. No, not that way. That attitude won't be there. But naturally and automatically you feel free in the presence of people who have got devotion to God or who are interested in spiritual ideas. That's how that happens. So that discernment really comes. So it's not a layer there. It's a natural character. It is not a layer. It is not a deliberately programmed diplomatic skill that you develop. It is a natural characteristic. And this you find in the lives of many great spiritual personalities.
Characteristics for the survival also.
Yes.
Keep a distance from the tiger.
Tiger also Atman. Sarvam Khalidam Brahman. Tiger also Atman. Atman is in tiger. Ramakrishna says an elephant is coming, chasing you. An elephant also is, this is story you can find throughout. Yes. Elephant also Atman, but there is another Atman sitting on elephant. He is the Mahout. He tells you, please move away. Why don't you listen to him? So, but in fact, these instructions won't be necessary for any spiritual seeker. It becomes natural. But when we read these things, we are able to understand where we are heading and what progress we are making. That's all.
Should we evaluate where we are, Swami, along the way?
Excuse me?
Don't think of yourself as the highest, aspirant, and be honest with yourself. How does one really judge that place? Should we be, monitoring our own level?
This often, in spiritual life, it's a matter of inner experience. You don't have to be certified by somebody that you have reached this particular level. Now you can start. In fact, this is in spiritual life, it's a matter of inner experience. The best way to learn these things is to read the life of spiritual personalities. In fact, from their life, you get more information on this intricate, finer aspects of spiritual life than from books. I give one example. See, in fact, why I am referring to Sri Ramakrishna's life, because more than any other spiritual personality, he is familiar. I mean, you are familiar with Sri Ramakrishna and his life. That's why I am referring to Sri Ramakrishna. You can find in many other great spiritual personalities. See, when Sri Ramakrishna reached Dakshineshwar, he was very particular. He had brought with him the baggage of his orthodox background. So he was not even willing to take food from Dakshineshwar. He was so orthodox, because every great spiritual personality will have two aspects, the human and the divine. The human aspect will be, it will consist of the cultural background, the domestic background, even the folklore, the conventions, the belief systems, all that prevail in the particular society or community where they are born. In all great spiritual personalities, right? Shankaracharya, when he read the Kashi Manisha Panchakam, a man belonging to lower caste was right. He was driving a number of dogs, cattle, and all that. He asked, "You please move away. I'm coming from Ganga after Ganga bath, or taking bath in the Ganga, holy Ganga. I'm coming." But that Shankaracharya immediately realized. She overgrew that. That's the difference between these great spiritual personalities and other human beings. Now, Sri Ramakrishna, see, when he came to Dakshineshwar, he was very orthodox. His elder brother was doing puja. Sri Ramakrishna started doing puja in Vishnu temple. And then, but he was a great devotee. And he was very, very, very orthodox, very conservative. In following the do's and don'ts of the traditional orthodox background. But slowly, he overgrew all that. And then he himself became the pujari, the worshipper of the temple. And he realized the highest. He realized Mother, the Divine Mother in living form. And then at one point of his spiritual practices, he found it difficult to pluck flowers and bilwa leaf necessary for the worship, because he found this tree, the leaves, flowers, all as Brahmanism. So he could not pluck it. And Sri Ramakrishna himself says, in the first few lines you find, that's the first instruction which Yam listened Sri Ramakrishna giving. See, when your mind automatically and naturally and effortlessly goes to God without your effort, in spite of yourself, and when you chant the name of God, you feel your hair standing on his head, you feel kind of inner feeling it is indescribable. Then you need not follow any of the formal worship or rituals. Because you go beyond it. So Sri Ramakrishna later reached the highest Advaita, and later it became difficult for him to perform the daily rituals, plucking flowers and all that. So you can see this. So great spiritual personalities also go through this process for teaching other spiritual seekers. So now if you read the lives of great spiritual personalities, that's the best education. That is better education, because that will give you more information on some of the intricate aspects of practical spiritual life, more than books. And Sri Ramakrishna's life is a classic in that regard.
And the physical body is made up of the 5 elements. But what of the subtle?
Oh yes. Subtle body is what remains when the physical body is destroyed. Subtle body consists of the 5 senses of perception, the 5 senses of action, the 5 vital energies. Sometimes some interpreters say the 5 vital elements also, but are included, plus mind and intellect. Total 17. Total 17. Sometimes, now this is one interpretation, but both means the same. So you can say the 5 senses of perception, 5 senses of action, and then 5 vital forces plus mind and intellect. These 17 constitute what we call the subtle body, and they remain intact even when you die in their subtle form. That's why we are born again with the same tendencies. I should explain a little more on this just for a beginning. Now, this is one explanation, but there is a more elaborate exposition of the subtle body. It is like this. So, subtle body consists of 5 senses of action to be taken as single unit. 5 senses of perception again to be taken as a single unit, and 5 elements to be taken as the third unit, and 5 vital energies, pancha pranas, fourth unit, plus mind, intellect, ego sense and memory. That is the fifth unit. So here each unit consists of several factors, but the entire personality is included here. So this 5 plus our ignorance of the reality. Ignorance of reality, avidya it is called. Ignorance of reality means we think that we are the psychophysical mechanism, we are not the Atman. This is ignorance. And out of this ignorance, desire comes, kama. And out of this desire, action comes, generates. So avidya, kama, karma. These are the 3 plus the other 5. These are the 8-fold. This 8-fold phenomenon is technically called a city having 8. It's called Puri Ashtakam. Ashtakam means 8. Puri means city or town. Now here you find the entire human personality is included. 5 senses of action, 5 senses of perception, 5 vital energies and 5 elements. Then, because these are not enough for one to be born in this world and think that is the body. Ignorance. 6th, and then desire. 7th, and action, karma. 8. And of course, one point also you should remember that another single factor which consists of 4 factors. I said already, mind, intellect, ego sense and memory. Antakarana. So these are the 5 plus avidya, kama, karma. And because of ignorance, we think we are this body. And then we develop many desires for many things. And then we act. We are thinking that this action will satisfy our desire. And this is the cause of the cyclic rotation through the wheel of cyclic existence. The moment we come out of this, the moment we get freedom from ignorance, we will have no more desire for anything worldly, and we will not have any desire for doing anything, and then there will be no rebirth. So you can write this is called Puryashtakam, means 8 compartments. We can say one city having 8 compartments. 8, should I explain once more? 5 senses of action, 5 senses of perception, 5 vital energies, Pancha Prana it is called in Sanskrit. Then Pancha Mahabhutas means 5 elements, and then Antakarana having 4 compartments: mind, intellect, ego sense and memory. These are the 5, plus ignorance, desire and action. These are the. This is the vehicle through which an individual soul moves from life to death and death again back to life and again through this vehicle. The moment we realize, either through the path of devotion, the path of action, the path of wisdom, or the path of psychological concentration, it's called Raja Yoga, we come out of this way. This is the essence. I think we have already reached the time, 11:30.